oldest on the team. And I still look good, but recoveries went well. Been through this injury before. Success out there, so nothing new here. I'm good. I'm back. So, yeah.
All right, that was Jordan Strahan. I said that right, Alan?
Jordan Strahan, yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Strahan today at the Defensive Player Media Day. I'll let Pauline decide whether or not he still looks good, but this was kind of a common thread that came up throughout the press conferences today. Several players, Sterling Lucas himself, all kind of saying that Jordan Strahan looks good, looks healthy, looks stronger than he did before the injury, I believe was the specific quote from Sterling Lucas. So pretty important player at a position of need that needs to fully bounce back, and kind of playing around with the idea that he's one of the oldest on the team as a 7th-year senior, although he says he's not the oldest. Any guesses off the top of your head who's actually older?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with.
We had this discussion. I don't know at this point. I haven't.
I'm like 99%.
Was he the oldest last year?
No, because he's in as an. I think he's in like year 8. Yeah, because he was at Georgia.
He's getting up there. But he's
I'm pretty sure D'Angelo Gibbs has a mortgage or something, but.
Okay, yeah, so that's D'Angelo Gibbs, who transferred in this offseason. It's kind of had a twisted path, I guess, as a former high 4-star or 5-star on Rivals.
Oh, yeah, no, he was a big recruit coming out of Grayson, that first Kirby Smart class.
But, yeah, so we can talk about him a little bit, too. Before we get fully started, a couple of notes here at the top. This is the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. If you're listening on Thursday or Friday or anytime this weekend, we have a special promotion going on this weekend starting Friday through Monday. You can get a full year of Gamecock Scoop Premium for just $23. That's normally $100, so pretty big discount there. Just use promo code GSCOOP23 at checkout to get that promo. Like I said, it's only running till Monday though, so take advantage now if you're listening. Actually, not now; it doesn't go live till midnight, but in a few hours. Check it out tomorrow. Yeah. Let me talk a little bit recruiting. That's how we usually start each of these shows, and then we'll get into what we're hearing, what we've witnessed from week 2 of fall camp. So recruiting-wise, a little bit of a surprise last weekend. Jalewis Solomon, who was being recruited as a DB, plays both sides of the ball in high school, ended up choosing Auburn. From everything I've heard, that was like a down to the last minute sort of thing. I have a few more details on that and how NIL played into everything in the weekly recruiting wrap-up, which will run tomorrow morning. That'll be a special free version of the weekly recruiting wrap-up. So if you've never checked one of those out, that'll be live tomorrow for free for everyone on GamecockScoop.com. Yeah, go free. Anyway, so that was a little bit of a surprise. You still have Daniel Hill coming up later in the month as far as announcements go. That's August 23rd, I believe, between South Carolina and Alabama. And then you're really starting to like wrap up the 2024 high school recruiting class, which is kind of surprising when you look at the numbers compared to the past couple of years, but we've kind of already talked that they're not planning on taking as many this time around, which gives them a lot more flexibility in the transfer portal and everything this offseason as well, which I think they'll take advantage of. Also, Rivals just recently released their first ever comprehensive ranking, which combines the transfer portal, JUCO, and high school recruiting class rankings all together. So South Carolina's final 2023 comprehensive ranking ended up being number 25 in the team rankings. That's a number 17 high school class and a number 49 transfer portal class, and all of that added up together for a number 25 overall class. It'll be interesting to see how they tweak it going forward and all that sort of stuff. I would say last year's class probably a little bit better than that. But you also have some things in there skewing it, like Colorado signed 50 players out of the portal, and they're the number 1 portal class, but their average star rating is low.
That's a separate show for another day, but that's not going to work. We don't think that's going to work, do we?
I
I
mean,
don't
it's
think
kind
it's
of
gonna
like what
work
we
this
did.
season.
It's kind of like what we did though. First year Shane Beamer came in, like we
It's
kind of
not like
just
that though. Not
completely.
50.
I mean, yeah, but I
I'm
mean,
getting us
knew
off
we
topic
had
as
those
usual, but
boots.
I'm taking whatever unders are out there on Colorado's win total.
I agree. I think the hype is definitely too high on them. But anyway, all of that's going to be in the weekly recruiting wrap up tomorrow. Definitely check that out on GamecockScoop.com. Let's a little fall. A little about the open periods at the end of last week. You can go check out that podcast from last week. You guys got a couple more open periods on Monday that both of you attended. Any reactions or impressions from those open periods? Pauline, you want to go first?
Yeah, I personally was really interested in seeing, as ridiculous as it sounds, the size of the O linemen, because we don't have Zach Pickens or Jordan Birch anymore. So, oh yeah, sorry, but regardless, like they're not as big as the kids were last year, and I knew that was going to be a deficit once like the Gator Bowl, like we knew that was going to be an issue. We always knew that we're losing the two biggest kids, so I thought that was really interesting. And then I was looking at a lot of the new kids, like the new transfers, and I mean his name is being thrown around a lot, but Trey Knox is I've been seeing him yeah. Wait, what?
I just said tall. He just dwarfs everybody.
He's really I mean, he goes and pops off over there, but him and Nick Elkinson, or did I say that right? Nick
Elksness. Yeah, that's what it is.
Elksness. But no, him as well doing I don't know. I'm also looking through a camera, so as much as I'd like to say about it, I'm not studying it like Alan. So Alan, would you like to give a little more on that?
Yeah, I think what I saw, as much as anything else, we saw one kind of one-on-one thing corner. It was, I think I posted the video online, but Spencer puts a ball up there, corner of the end zone, and Josh Simon comes down with it. A really well thrown ball on that, again, one-on-one drill. Kilgore with the coverage, I think. A really good coverage, a good catch. That was one for me, just looking at Josh Simon. This team's going to run a lot of 12 personnel, I think, is kind of my takeaway through a week, 10 days, whatever. You're going to see Knox and Elksness. You're going to see Knox and Simon. You're going to see Simon and Elksness. They're going to do a lot of different things with the tight ends. And I think especially having a guy who was a tight ends coach with Dowell they're going to do a lot of stuff with that. They're going to mix and match a lot.
Specifically Trey Knox's tight end coach. I think Joshua Simon is definitely being slept on. We're going to talk a little bit later about names that maybe the average fan that checked out for the summer doesn't know, but should know going into the season. And Simon's definitely one of mine. He actually is the all-time leading receiver at tight end from Western Kentucky from his 3 years there.
And that program scores points.
Yeah. So I do think he's going to be a weapon. He and Knox both. And then, you have all the weapons at wide receiver that we actually talked a good bit about last week. And then, Nick Elksness, we're kind of expecting to maybe take a little bit more of the Nate Atkins sort of role from last year.
I'm not sure where he's going to I don't know. I don't think he's as great as Nate Atkins was at the moment from what I'm looking at. I feel like he kind of is more of a generalized talent, if that makes sense.
It's the unknown. Well, it is the unknown commodity thing too, just because he was hurt pretty much the whole time he was at Florida. You don't really know what's there.
True. Hopefully it's a good scenario.
He's also, significantly younger, I guess, than Nate Atkins was. You brought that veteran presence as a fifth-year senior this year. We'll see. We'll kind of see what happens there with Elks. And you have the two freshman tight ends as well that could sort of work in bulk up. Another thing that I guess stood out from open practices, from what I've heard talking to you guys, other people, seeing some of the videos and everything, I found it pretty interesting that we saw full team reps of the first team offense, second team offense, third team offense. Rattler was leading the first team, as you'd expect, Doty the second team, but Lenore Sellers was leading that third team offense as a freshman. And Alan and I were talking about it over text like right after that. It's kind of interesting because, Tanner Bailey isn't a scrub. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He's been in the program longer. So it's kind of interesting to see that Sellers has already kind of taken that role. I don't know that they would slot him there on the official depth chart or whatever. We'll kind of see how the dress list shakes out for North Carolina and shakes out for the road games upcoming. But yeah, I mean, he's already made an impression, seemingly.
I think he just want. Oh, do you have something, Paulie?
Pauline's muted. So Alan, go ahead and say what you're going to say, and then Pauline can pop in after.
Yeah, I couldn't hear her. I just think with Lenoris, I think we talked about this coming out of the spring game, but like it's really easy to see why the staff likes him. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of watch the tools, the traits, he's a big kid. He's got a big arm. He's athletic. Like I have no idea what that means for playing football, especially not playing football in 2023 when he's behind Spencer and Luke on the depth chart, and who knows, maybe even still Tanner Bailey, but it's really not hard to put 2 and 2 together with just how he ended up here, why they wanted him here, and why he maybe might be QB3 right now, although we don't really know until we see a dress list for a road game.
So if I was to take my take on this, y'all bringing up Bubba or Tanner, but when I'm thinking he's kind of in a position right now where it was Luke Doty 3 years ago, where he kind of was like, people are starting to question like where he stands, I guess, on the team versus, and then Lenoris comes in and is getting all this media hype. It's kind of pushing his name underneath or like sweeping it under the rug type stuff. So, I mean, I feel like he might get a little bit of don't hate on any of our players, but like he definitely might be getting some negative, like why isn't Tanner playing?
I would like to specify that we are, again, I think Caleb and I had this conversation a little bit last week, but we are making judgments, statements, talking season conversation fodder off of a single rep in a single period of a single open practice.
Yeah, and the periods are like 5
technically
minutes.
the took 2 snaps, so we're talking about 2 reps, but the point still stands.
It was a good looking rep.
It was a good looking rep.
If you go to our Twitter, you can see it. I actually think Barstool Carolina retweeted the video for it as well. He kind of takes a little QB keeper around the edge and isn't touched until he's 10 yards down the field. I mean, granted, he's in a non-contact jersey and stuff, but you can see just how quickly he explodes through the hole, which leads me to believe or speculate that there might be a package for him some this season, or
that I believe. That I get on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw. I was watching about the Tennessee game a couple weeks ago. We saw several times where Joyner came in and ran some wildcat. Why not bring in your speedy freshman quarterback who maybe even has a better arm than Joyner? Although I think Joyner
there's a little bit of, and I was
gonna say, I think he has a dart. Like he throws. That was one of the things I did notice, because I know we were just talking about how great his throws are, but Spencer from this past season seems much more of like a running and mobile quarterback versus like I feel like Lenoris could be used in situations where like I don't know. I feel like he's more of a direct target. Like he's more willing to throw the ball than run it, I guess, and he's more accurate.
I really hesitate to make this specific comparison, but what are we doing here if we're not talking anyway? Dowell Loggins came from Arkansas. He wasn't calling the plays there, but he was obviously involved in those offensive rooms. You can squint and see some KJ Jefferson or Lenoris Sellers, just the frame, the running ability. Like, I don't want to do that. That's not really fair to either guy, especially not Lenoris. But like, if you're talking about like packages or how that might look on a 3rd and 1, I don't know. Like, is that crazy?
No, and I think that it seems pretty obvious to me that Loggins, in who he's been recruiting so far for future classes, we just got a commitment from 2026 quarterback Landon Duckworth last week. But he seems to like that sort of style quarterback, someone that can use their legs, has a good arm, but has that dual threat ability. So yeah, I don't think it's hard at all to at least think that maybe Loggins is looking for his next KJ Jefferson, and that Lenoris fits
I
that
think there's
archetype
so much
to some degree.
potential that he can form it.
We'll do some over-unders maybe next week or the week after. I know we did that last year, but I've got some Lenoris thoughts on that could be interesting.
Yeah, I would like to do some over-under snaps, assuming no one gets injured or anything that Lenoris sees. We also do want to quickly note, right before we got on here, we saw like some Twitter buzz or speculation that Luke Doty took some wide receiver. We were trying to talk and decide if we had seen that at all in any of the open periods, and as far as we remember or caught on tape, or
as far as the 12 periods we were allowed to see.
Yeah. We did not see that.
All we know.
But
apparently
maybe
other people did.
Yeah, I would say maybe we missed it. Maybe that did happen. If that did happen, I do think that is a pretty big indication of how they're viewing Lenoris, but also, maybe starting to think about how to work in Doty's athleticism in different ways, which is a similar journey that we saw with like Takarian Joyner. Once it was clear that perhaps there were better pure quarterbacks on the roster than them, but you still find a way to get that athleticism on the field.
Great.
Other impression from the week is we a few press conferences, got to hear from Beamer again, got to hear from the defensive players today. We'll get a little bit more tomorrow. Am I right about that? Or
no players till next week. Again, next Tuesday and Wednesday. Also, one more practice thing, just while I'm looking at my book here. Do you want to have the running back conversation again? Because we saw Bradley Dunn and DJ Twitty taking the reps with the 2s and 3s on Monday. And then going back to last Friday, you're looking at how that lined up. And that was Mario running with the 2s.
Yeah.
DK with the 1s both times. I don't know.
Well, DK at this point is like the leader of that. Like, I feel like all of them have to kind of like.
That doesn't. I don't know if again you're making things off reps, off small periods, off whatever. I don't know if that gets rid of many concerns Carolina fans might have just looking at that.
Well, I did see that you wrote a article, which you can find on GamecockScoop.com, about DK and how he's settling into pass protection, which is another important part of being a running back there, especially with as much as they're probably going to throw.
Yeah.
So I do think Joyner has kind of separated himself from the others.
Yeah.
But that's,
he's got his own life going on too. So
whether or not that's ideal, and whether or not
I'm not even so much saying that's not ideal, because that's going to happen at this point. One way that is going to happen. The depth question.
I think they're all very much the same. Like, I think that's the bottom line is that no one knows yet.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if any of you have been able to see anything from DJ Braswell or heard anyone talk about.
We haven't seen any Braswell in the practices.
Actually, no.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
There was a lot of hype around him last year about him coming.
We didn't see Mario running with the 2s and the 3s on Monday.
Actually, I feel like I take that back. My last statement. I do think out of all of them, besides like DK, I feel like Mario has actually like really kind of adjusted, because he came from a D3 school, if I'm not mistaken. And like, I mean, I've had multiple like conversations with him about how like grateful he is for the fact that he's like in a D1 school. So I think he really is putting in 110% to be like, I want to be. I don't know if it would be DK or him. I mean, I couldn't tell you who would be first and second.
It's DK.
But
I mean, I'm more just wondering what the rest of that looks like, and if you are actually. I mean, I've heard Shane say before that they want to take 5 scholarship running backs. They have 5 for games, and boy, it gets tough to do the math when you think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's and I don't think any of us are questioning like work ethic, and it seems like I talked to Mario back when we first signed him before he was on campus and everything, and it seemed like a very like hardworking, quality individual. But yeah, it's a huge step up from D3 Newberry to the SEC. So that's going to be tough. But I do think he's obviously going to be dependent on at some point through the season, just because you have to have some warm bodies back there pretty much at this point.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that in. I thought that was. I'm looking back at the depth
that's
charts
interesting.
and we're gonna have a depth chart conversation in a second here anyway. But just looking at that, and okay, we'll see.
Another thing while we're on the offense that has kind of stood out to me this week from hearing from some of the offensive players is we're getting a little bit more of a vision of how Coach Loggins, calls plays and how the players feel about them. And one of the things that I think, at least in talking season, sounds good is that it sounds like he's trying to keep things simple and allow the players to play fast and loose and all those things. And if there was one overarching complaint from the Marcus Satterfield era, I think it was that things got a little too complicated at times, which made players get a little in their head at times and not be able to play as loose until they got into the F it mentality or whatever at the end of the year last year. So if they're starting off the Loggins era, continuing to have, I guess, that sort of philosophy about things, I think that's probably a good signal, at least, before any snaps are played.
I don't know if simplicity, I mean, like, if we're talking dumbing it down to, like, these are, like, the 5 plays we're going to run. Like, that
I don't think that
never has worked out for us. Like, I feel like Missouri's a prime example of when we just got so tired of it.
8,000
and, like,
bubble screens in a row.
Literally, like, it's they caught on so quick, and if we don't have the variation, which right now we are kind of looking at a very like even playing field, as we were just like saying, depth wise for a lot of the offensive positions, like who are we? I don't know. I feel like we have to add a little bit of spice to it, but like not overcomplicated, obviously.
Should we talk depth chart while you just mentioned that? Should we go into a little bit of that?
Yeah, right before we do that though, one more note on Loggins and I guess things you'd like to hear at this point in the offseason. Trey Knox did mention that in general the offense has been better about turnovers than they were earlier. I guess it's only been 2 weeks, and that Rattler's doing a good job of protecting the ball, which I forgot kind of how rough the season started last season. But before he blew up against Tennessee and Clemson and Notre Dame, I believe he had a negative interception to touchdown ratio, or it was like basically even. It ended up being a little bit more respectable. I think it ended up like 19-12 or something. But if you're going to have the sort of season that you really need,
the 12 is not going to work. That just can't happen.
That needs to be a single-digit turnover.
I should be able to count it on 5 fingers less than.
Yeah, especially, at that point in the season or whatever. But yeah, let's talk depth chart. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of look at each position. We can say who we think the presumed starter is, and then whether or not there's some flexibility there for some other guys to move up. You want to do offense or defense first? Up to you guys.
We'll start offense.
Offense, since we're doing it.
Yeah, well, we already had a couple. We've already, who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, we already knocked off a couple off the list, so we might as well finish it.
Yeah, so those couple that we already talked about, quarterback obviously is Rattler. Right now, Doty is slotted in at the number 2, but we talked a lot about Sellers maybe making a move there to, if Rattler actually went down, it'd be interesting to see what happened there, I guess. Running back, Joyner to start. We know Juju McDowell is going to have a role, who we didn't just talk about a second ago, but that he's not going to be the every down back. And then you have Mario Anderson, and then you have the 2 freshmen, Cameron Sandlin, who moved over from tight end, and DJ Braswell, but we haven't heard a ton about them, like moving up into that upper echelon at the moment. All right, tight end. We talked a lot about that already. You kind of have your big 3, Trey Knox, Joshua Simon, Nick Elksness, the 3 transfers. And then Connor Cox and Reed McCaskill are both freshmen, but highly recruited freshmen. So we'll see how that goes. All right, now let's get into the fun part, which is the offensive line. I feel like we are starting to get a little bit of a vision of what that's going to look like. Let's go with the easy side first, which I think is the left side, left tackle, Ja'Kai Moore, right?
I think it has to be. I'm more interested in who would be the second there.
We've heard Jackson Hughes' name.
Yeah.
We've heard Big Tree Bobbleade, but do you want a true freshman there?
I feel like he'll have to be put in at some point.
I also wonder too, like if Ja'Kai actually did go down, are you pulling the second string left tackle, or are you pulling someone else from the line and just shuffling that way?
Yeah, to me, that's probably what would have to happen, because I just can't see you starting an SEC game with a true freshman left tackle. Even though I really think Big Tree, I really think Big Tree is a hit on a prospect. I think he's going to be great.
Oh, absolutely.
That's just a tough position to put a true freshman in. Let's go on down the line. Left guard, Trey Jones is who we think.
I got
really?
Jones. Just going off 2 practices so far. I'm looking at it now. Trey Jones is at right guard, both those. Gargiulo at left.
Okay.
But those might be interchangeable. I mean, we've talked about Gargiulo, Yale, whatever.
I think he has a lot of talent. Like, I'm excited to see if I'll be able to see him like on the field.
He's played all 5 positions at Yale. They've been working him at left guard now. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up. I mean, that's one of those two. Again, you talk about shuffling things. Where like, okay, if Trey Jones went down, you could kick Gargiulo to right guard.
And I think probably with your right-handed quarterback, you might want him on the left side.
You probably do anyway. But
by the way, if that's a name that doesn't sound familiar to people that have been checked out for the summer or whatever, that's transfer from Yale, and he was the captain at Yale. So if you don't know how Yale does things, they only have one captain for the whole team, and he was the captain at Yale last year. So kind of tells you about his leadership capabilities and everything. So staff really likes him. All right, to center, Vershawn Lee. It seems like that's kind of maybe the most stable of.
He said as much yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 days ago when we had offensive availability. He said, "Yeah, I'm playing center now. I'm learning center." That seems like it's going to happen.
And then right guard, as we said, Trey Jones, maybe Gargiulo. Just depends on however they want to get out.
Morgan running with the 2s there right now.
Yeah. And then we have heard that Marquis Anderson and Trovon Baugh both look pretty good, could work their way up into there. But again, true freshman, tough spot to put a true freshman in. And then at right tackle right now, we got Tyshawn Wanamaker and maybe Kason Henry.
Sidney Fugar ran with the 1s in the first open practice. That's definitely the question.
I have not seen Kason really.
He did not get reps
everybody,
once,
but like, I have not seen.
He's still working from an injury. He got hurt in the spring.
Yeah, he has surgery. Pretty sure with his knees.
It's not where you want to have the questions, but I do think your questions still are at the 2 tackle spots, and especially right tackle right now, just because you could be Fugar, could be Wanamaker. Yeah. Wanamaker's probably the more experienced player there, but I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
So yeah, one of the concerns about Fugar is he is a big boy, but he wasn't necessarily built like an SEC offensive lineman yet, but he's also done an off-season in conditioning now with an SEC program. What do you think of whenever you see him out there? I mean, does he look like he fits in with that line, or is he looking maybe not as athletic as some of those other guys?
He looks okay in really short reps, but again, we're talking, I think we saw 2 reps against Air in the first practice, and he played 2 reps against the defense in the second practice, so
sure,
paper thin, but that's going to be a rotation. I would expect that to be, you're definitely getting more than 1 right tackle, probably even within games.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they're going to play around with the line, but I mean, or like the positions, but I feel like for the first couple of games, I don't know if they're going to try it out for C, but they're going to be doing a bunch of different switches to see
you see, this is the thing though. This is something Shane's talked about is you don't have a Georgia State game this year. You don't have who they play year 1.
Exactly.
You get a big game.
We don't really have time to figure it out.
Here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the interesting thing on the offensive line is you have a lot of veterans on that starting offensive line, right? Sky Moore is a redshirt senior. Trey Jones is a redshirt junior. Gargiulo is a grad transfer. Vershawn Lee is a redshirt junior. Wanamaker is a redshirt junior. But then behind them, there is a lot of inexperience. Some talented inexperience, but a lot of inexperience. And it's just pretty scary to be that thin, I think, at this point. All right, shall we move on to the wide receivers?
Yep. I think this more or less writes itself too, a lot of it. But
so there's an obvious Antoine Wells, Xavier Legette, Amarian Brown. Those are your three returners. Those are the people that have the most time in this program and have already kind of proven it on the field. Anyone that you could see working their way into the rotation behind those guys?
Nick Harbor, but
that'd be fun. I don't know. We'll see.
I think it's hard to imagine that you don't at least once a game just throw one up to Harbor. I mean, he's 6'6" and runs a 4.3. You have to, you have to do that at least once a game. So I think he'll obviously get some snaps.
Omega Blake, I've seen him get a lot of snaps. We talked about him pretty extensively last week, so I'm not going to hit that again. But that'd be another one I'd say.
And then we haven't heard a ton about grad transfer Eddie Lewis out of Memphis. We kind of figured that
last week.
Yeah, we figured he would slot into that like Josh Van role. He also has some punt return experience and stuff, but hasn't worked his way into the top group, at least at the moment. And then another name that I just wanted to bring up because I've heard a lot of positive buzz about is freshman Elijah Caldwell. I believe I mentioned him a little bit last week. But that's the guy out of Rock Hill. He was, I believe, the last high school signee of the 2023 class. Laid off for all those things, but it sounds like kind of definitely found a diamond in the rough there. From what I've heard, he's the most polished of the freshman wide receivers from a route running perspective and all those sorts of things. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him out there a little bit as well at some point this season.
Yeah, we've seen some freshman injury problems too, where that position, at least CJ Adams and Kelton Henderson were both limited or out of practice completely. We were last open on Monday, for whatever that's worth.
All right, let's look at the defense. So offensively, I feel like that's your strength, though, right? You pretty much every starter along the offense is either junior or senior. So at the very least, you have tons of veteran and experience and all those sorts of things. Defense is almost the opposite, where we've talked a lot about how much you're having to replace on defense, but that you're getting maybe more talent from that replacement, but less experience, all those sorts of things. Let's start with the secondary, which we kind of already talked about last week. It's pretty straightforward at this point, but we can talk about who might be able to play their way into that. So I'm just going to run straight down. You have Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune and David Spalding all kind of slotted in at those corner spots. And then Nick Emenwari and DQ Smith at the two safety spots. What are the names have you heard beyond those guys that could potentially play their way into some playing time this year, you think?
Heard a lot of Judge Collier. Go ahead and start there. Freshman. Saw him get that one-on-one rep with Simon. Heard Boogie Huntley talking about him this morning. I think that's one I would start with right there. It's a crowded, it's a talented, but it's a very crowded. Again, it's kind of like the offensive line freshman group at that DB position. Collier, I'd start there for sure. And then another one we heard today was Jalen Kilgore. Same thing. Heard Young. Like, those would be the two, I think. And I also think there's a flexibility question to be asked here, too. Can either of those guys play nickel? Are you comfortable with them in space? What happens if you need someone there? If a safety goes down, well, okay, David Spalding played a little bit of safety last year. You kick him there. Well, okay, then you need a corner. Like, there's a versatility question here as much as anything else, just because you feel like you have your best five with OD, Sell, Spalding, DQ, and Nick. But if one of those
those are your only five. Yeah.
Not even only five, but how do you move the puzzle pieces if one of those goes down? It is kind of an offensive line question, sort of. I think you're starting from a much better place.
Yeah, I think you have plenty of talent behind them. Again, like you said, similar to the offensive line, but they're inexperienced talent. But I do think freshmen can play DB in the SEC successfully if they have the talent for it.
Last
Yeah,
year
those two
showed
names,
you pretty clearly.
right?
Yeah, I was next.
The two names you mentioned are the names I'm hearing the most too. But again, if that is true, like Kilgore, pretty highly rated recruit. Collier came out of nowhere, didn't even have a star ranking before he got an offer from Torian Gray, and now pretty making noise in camp. That's pretty impressive talent evaluation on the part of the staff once again, which was the same story with Nick Amendola and DQ Smith. Linebacker wise, we assume Debo Williams. He's the only
healthy.
Well, he and Stone Blanton are the two that got some playing time last year that are returning. Mohamed Kamba is coming back from that injury. Van Martin Scott kind of was an everyman. And then Pup Howard, another freshman that's really made a lot of waves there. How likely do you think it is that Pup could maybe jump ahead of Debo Williams before the season's over?
I don't know about Debo. I think there's
I don't think likely.
I think you're looking at a question here almost of they played 4 linebackers a lot of last season, even when everybody was healthy. You had Sherrod, Brad, Stone, Mo was hurt, but Brad Pup's going to play. That's, I guess, the easiest way I could say that. He's going to play. I think he's going to play significant snaps at some point, probably early in the year, because they're not super deep at linebacker after those 4. Stone Blanton's banged up right now. He's been out of both the 2 open practices we've been allowed to watch. Keep an eye on that going into UNC. That's the best I would. Pup's going to play. Like I don't know. I don't think he's taking the field for the first defensive snap of the season, but I think that's going to be much closer to rotation than people think.
And then the somewhat forgotten man at linebacker is transfer Jerron Willis, who is the highest rated transfer, at least on Rivals, in this 2023 class. He's out of Auburn, former 4-star, was behind some pretty talented guys, pretty talented veterans at Auburn, so didn't really get a chance to show much there. But wouldn't surprise me to see him in the rotation. Have you guys seen him line up with like the second team or anything at practice?
Got him with the 3s, linebacker.
3s.
Your 2s were Bam Martin Scott and Ronnie Porter. Obviously, the caveat here that Stone Blanton's hurt.
Right.
And Kaba wasn't running with the drills either. He's still recovering. So you're looking at a kind of mashed linebacker unit there. But that's what we had the last open period. And then it was Andrew Colasandro and Jared Willis with the 3s. I'm looking at it now.
I mean, I think our talent level is enough to where we're able to replace somebody almost. I would say almost as equal among like all of the. I mean, if Stone gets healthy and Mo gets healthy, then honestly, like I would say that's one of our more secure positions.
I'm with you. I think you feel pretty good at linebacker too. I do think there's a. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just not even in a bad way, but like kind of an addition by subtraction thing. Sherrod and Brad, you're losing a lot of experience there, but I also think Stone Blanton, Pup Howard, Mo Cobb.
I feel like Stone, if he's healthy enough, we can see him pop off, but he just has not been able to get many opportunities to show it on the field during games.
I actually think they're going to be better at linebacker this year, even with losing 2 starters last year. That sounds
so.
This
discussion right here is what I listen to all the national podcasts. I watch SEC Now. I do all those sorts of things. Pretty much any time South Carolina's 2023 season has come up, they've been like, wow, they were terrible against the run last year, and they lost all of their front 7, so they must be really bad this year too. And that's where I think I'm disagreeing pretty heavily with people that aren't, invested in this program and paying as close of attention to this program as we are, because you are losing veteran presence in Sherrod Green and Brad Johnson. You're losing a veteran presence in Jordan Birch, and I don't think that you have anyone to replace Birch specifically. But outside of really just Birch, I think pretty much every other position is getting a talent upgrade or not much of a drop off.
I'll say one other one. You're losing Pickens. I don't think you have a good enough replacement there You just got to do it by committee.
I don't think they'll
That's
ever find a man as big as him to be able to replace him.
We'll do that in a second with that position group, but that's the only. No, I'm with you though on principle. Though I think you're better at linebacker. I don't want to say you're better at corner because you lost 2 NFL ones, but I don't think you're completely in the wilderness either with Sell and OD.
Yeah.
And I think you're good at safety. You can figure it out at nickel too.
So let's get to that defensive line that we were just talking about. So you replace, Jordan Birch and Gilbert Edmond. And I do think, this is one where maybe a slight downgrade, but you still have some experience and size. And it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be a disaster. How about that? Right now, probably slotted in, you definitely have Jordan Strawn, who we talked about at the top of the show. We've heard several mentions of Tyreek Johnson as a redshirt senior taking a big step forward, which he absolutely needs to. At this point. Jatius Gear, remember, is a transfer from Syracuse, originally from Belton Honeypath in South Carolina. And then you have a bunch of guys that are kind of unproven but have some a little bit of experience. And then I guess Desmond Umeozulu. What about Terrell Dawkins? We seeing him kind of moving around good out there, still struggling with injury stuff.
I think he's kind of he's kind of getting back into the he's easing into it because I don't see him popping off, but I do see him out and about.
He's not wearing the brights anymore. If you want to start with that, but he also wasn't playing much when he was healthy last year, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah,
There was Birch and Edmond, so you can take that into account too. But I don't know. I'm not as high on Terrell.
I mean, he could be a big tool though. If he is, he's big, tall.
To be clear though, this is not to cut you off, Pauline, but this is going to have to be a by committee thing. You don't have a Jadeveon Clowney here. You don't have a guy that's going to get double-digit sacks. I feel comfortable saying that. You're just going to have to find a way to do this by committee, which is why I think you're going to probably see, 6, 7 defensive ends playing in most games. They're going to get bodies in and out.
Yeah, it's definitely a piece it together year while you wait on Umeozulu to develop a little bit more, who I think he'll get some snaps this year too. And of course, Dylan Stewart comes in next year. You have a guy like Wendell Gregory, who is a linebacker, but also an edge. He could play some of that hybrid role, kind of a Donovan Westmoreland type. So I do think help is on the way. Can you piece it together enough this year? If everyone stays healthy, especially Strawn, Tyreek Johnson,
I think that's the key, though. That's the key.
Then you're okay. But if any of those guys go down, it gets a little sketchy pretty quickly.
Yeah, right now, as you're just looking back at last week, with your ones, you've got Strawn and Tyreek, and with the twos, it's Jatius Gear and Brian Thomas Jr. that were playing there. And also, I think Tonka Hemingway is going to end up playing a little bit outside too.
Yeah, Tonka, and we saw a little Elijah Davis outside in the spring game as well.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I guess I was coming from as far as the interior. I think the interior is very strong, and you have some flexibility with some of those guys. So Alex Huntley, Tonka Hemingway on the interior, good position with both of those. But you also have Elijah Davis coming in. You have 4-star freshman Xavier McLeod. You have Nick Barrett, who's a junior now. TJ Sanders, who had a good offseason last year.
TJ Sanders buzz too. Just talking to Travian Robertson last week.
So I think you're solidly, 5-6 deep on the interior, and some of those guys can also help out on the outside. I don't know. Maybe I have my rose-colored glasses on, but it seems to me like they're going to be able to piece together enough on that front seven to really not.
I think the health. Just going to Pauline's point, if they stay healthy, I think they can piece it together too. I'm mainly coming asking about pressure, who's going to get to the quarterback, because you lost 4 of your top 5 in sacks last year, and all right, you can clog the middle a little bit. I think you feel
that's
pretty
what
good
I'm concerned about.
You feel pretty good about your corners right now. I'm not really sure who's getting the pressure at this point. It's going to have to be a Gear. It's going to have to be a Tyreek Strawn if he's healthy. You got to make up those sack numbers somehow.
Strawn is a pass rush specialist.
Yes, he is.
So if he is healthy, 2 years ago, that was his main role on the team. Yeah. I believe he owns the Georgia State single season sack record as well. So if he's back to the way he was, the way that Sterling Lucas says, this morning he said that he seemed stronger than he was pre-injury, then that goes a long way in answering that question. I also think we might have to see Sterling Lucas dial up some more blitz packages than he has in the past couple of years. That's not something that he actually does a ton, but we might have to see that a little bit more this year if you're not getting a natural pass rush.
Yeah, and then I asked the question about which of those linebackers you feel good about in pass rush versus in coverage, and that's where you're gonna have to just wait and see on some of these guys.
I think we pretty well hit our last topic.
Who's the starting punt? No, I'm just kidding.
But are there any other players, I guess, that you have heard throughout fall camp thus far that you think could flash this season that maybe the casual South Carolina fan that's been checked out all summer isn't thinking about, and we should put them on their radar?
Well, mine was taken already.
Who was yours?
Nick.
Yeah,
Bergulia or whatever.
He's going to play a lot. I think that's a guy that might end up playing every snap this year if he's healthy. Probably will. I mean, let's be honest about it. First of all, I would say I asked the position coaches this between the golf outing and the media day last week. All right, who's the guy in the room that's going to pop? I would encourage you to go check that out. If you're subscribed to GamecockScoop.com, those words are on the website, I think from like last weekend. But I'll give you one that I've heard. Jatius Gear, we talked about him a little bit. Syracuse transfer. He was a late portal window ad. He was in the spring one. So he kind of comes in after spring ball, comes in after we'd gone through all of that, after the regular transfer portal class in January and February. Sterling Lucas is high on him. He thinks he was telling me a little bit about the pressure rate's good. He's good at, shedding blocks, things like that. Got to finish with the quarterback. And that if he can put that together, maybe that, I don't know. Again, that would be my answer. Just a guy maybe South Carolina fans don't know about, or if you've been checked out this summer. We're going to play the over-unders and the team leader stuff next week or the week after. I don't know who's going to lead this team in sacks. I really don't. We're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah, we hit on several of mine too, I guess. I said early in the offseason that Pup Howard was my Nick Edmonds-Worry freshman of the year or whatever. I still stand by that. But the name I mentioned before on offense, I think Elijah Caldwell may get some playing time as a freshman, which would probably be surprising to some people. 3-star wide receiver out of Rock Hill. That was the very last person added in the class or whatever. But yeah, I've heard good things so far there. So we'll see. That pretty much does it as far as our rundown for this week. Like I said, if you are on GamecockScoop.com this weekend and you have not yet signed up for premium, this is a good weekend to do it. $23 for 1 year of Gamecock Scoop Premium. That offer runs from tonight at midnight till Monday at midnight. Just use code GSCOOP23 whenever you check out for that. In the meantime, we will have plenty of articles on GamecockScoop.com, and we will be back here next week to talk Week 3 and really start previewing UNC and maybe start talking about some maybe start talking about some of our season predictions and stuff like that. It's coming real soon. We're about 3 weeks away. Until next time, it's been the GamecockScoop.com podcast. We'll see you.